In this video, I'll be covering how to create new listing types on your platform, where listing types are different types of listings that users can create across your platform. That could be physical products, digital products, rentals, events, classes, one-on-one services, group classes, group services, jobs. And I will go one by one through each of those to show you how I would set up a new version of it right now. So if we were to create a one-on-one service, we would click plus new, name the listing type something like service or one-on-one service, and define what role can create that listing type. So usually it's the service providers or sellers. I already have one created for services, so I'll click in to edit that and talk through each of the tabs and what settings you'll probably want to enable. On the general tab, just the name and description is necessary to start with. The scheduling tab, if it's a service where you want the customer to select from the availability of the user, the availability should be tracked at the user or seller level. So you'll select user here, and you want to check the appointment radio button box here. And that will allow the customer, when they're checking out, to select from the schedule or availability of the seller. On the monetization tab, here you'll just determine what percentage you want to collect off every transaction using the 4 fields at the bottom here. So if we wanted to say, take 5% from the sellers on every transaction. If we're making a sale of $100, we would take $5 from the seller. And we could also upcharge the customer 5%. So maybe the customer pays $105 on a $100 listing if we do this. You can mix and match with flat fees. So if we added 2 here, it would charge the vendor 5% plus $2 on every, or 2 of whatever your currency unit is on your platform, on every transaction. Or we can just make it free by keeping everything at 0. There's one more important setting that you may want to add here, is if you want to direct all of the payments to your business Stripe account and you don't want to automatically pay out sellers through Stripe Connect and have sellers connect their bank account for automatic payouts, you would check this box. You would say direct all payments to the platform Stripe account. And that just means you'll have to manually pay out each of your users, but all of the money will go through you first. The permissions tab, for services, you'd probably want to have a confirmation flow. You'd check this box such that the sellers have to confirm the service before it's officially booked. It's best practice to check this box to force users to log in to book services if you have chat enabled. Otherwise, leave this unchecked if you want guest checkout. It's just if you have chat enabled, there can be some inconsistencies with UX unless you have this checked. So it's best practice, if you do have chat or want to have chat enabled, to check this box to force users to log into book services. And it's also beneficial to collect users' information when they sign up anyway, if you want to retarget them later. So it's best practice to keep this checked. But if you do absolutely want to prioritize guest checkout, uncheck it. If you want the ability to have add-ons or upsells for services, I would check the Enable Advanced Payment Builder, which will enable in listing creation the ability to create add-ons. If you check this box here, it allows sellers to ask questions of the customer on checkout that are unique to the service, but it's not essential usually, so you can leave that unchecked in most cases. If you want to require admins to approve all transactions before they are visible to the seller, you can check this box. That's pretty rare, but just wanted to point that out as well. Under the Actions tab, it automatically adds the chat buttons on the receipt page. This is what button should show up on the receipt page, basically, after a customer makes a transaction. So everyone has the ability to chat with one another by default. You can click the trash icon if you don't want chat enabled between providers and customers here, or you can add new action buttons like the ability to leave a review, which would be this route /review for the TX instance, the transaction instance, and you can make that visible to customers after the service is confirmed and create the action button. And that would, putting it exactly as we see here, would add a review button on the transaction details page. And by transaction details page, I mean on the transactions table. If you go to the details tab here, which is something you're also redirected to by default after making a transaction, you can edit what buttons show up in the bottom through that actions button panel we were just on. So for services, I think we left off on the actions button For add-ons, you can create platform level add-ons here. I won't go too deep in that. We'll probably have an advanced video for if you have add-ons enabled on your platform. Terminology, best practice to just put the buyer and seller terminology here and the call to action terminology you want. Like if it's a service, it would probably be book now. The buyer might be the client, the seller might be the service provider or provider, but you can name them whatever makes the most sense for in the context of services on your platform. And field groups usually isn't necessary either. It's more of an advanced feature we'll cover in a later video. So that is how to create a listing type service in the backend of Tangram. Please keep in mind after you create any new listing type, there won't be any fields attached to it. So if I went in as a seller and tried to create a service, there would be no fields in the listing creation form. You also have to go through the steps of going to the fields table and manually connecting what fields you want on that form. So if we wanted the title of the listing or the service to be in that listing creation form, we'd search for that or create a new field if it doesn't exist. Go to the Edit tab and connect that field group to services. It looks like it's already connected in this case, but if you create a new listing type, there will be no fields connected to it at first. You'll have to manually click plus new and decide what listing type you want to connect to the field. And usually if you want it to show up on the, and always if you want the field to show up on the listing creation form, you would select this field should be shown when users create listings of this type. And you can decide by checking this box whether it's required or not required when you're creating the listing. The other options on here when you're connecting fields to field groups is, do you want this to be a question on the checkout page? In which case you would select, I want users to fill this out when they book listings of this type. And the last one's very rare. It's if you want the field that you created to be visible to sellers on the receipt, basically, on the confirmation page for users who create listings of this type. The only case you'd probably want that is if there's like a post service docs or review materials that you want the seller to be able to share with the customer by pasting it into the transaction after the service happened. So in most cases, when you're creating fields and looking to connect it to a listing creation form, you'll just click the connected field groups, you'll click plus new, select the one-on-one service, whatever listing type you want the field connected to the form, and say when users create listings of this type, make them fill out the title field on the one-on-one service listing creation form, and it should be a required field. And you'd click create connection, it would add it to that drop down, but it's already done there.